oil pollution compensation mechanism, that is the CLC and the fund convention. Why this is the most important topic? Because not 99%, but 100% you will get a question, a good full question in your writtens. And I'm told by a student that in orals you are grilled into. I will take care of everything, written, oral, practical application, everything. But before I begin, March back, I hope to get your consolidated data of your email and you will get my reading material today. Don't worry. I have told you will get it. Now, first of all, the whole compensation mechanism is made up of two conventions. The Civil Liability Convention, that is CLC, and the Fund Convention. And both are conventions of IMO like SOLAS, STCW, MARPOL, your load line, tonnage, call regs, anything. They're conventions of IMO. A number of times in the question, there is a direct mention of the both the convention CLC and fund convention. You know what we are talking. Other times, there is no mention of the convention or other conventions and say, okay, describe the tiers like you have in the AC3 tier, no, 1, 2, 3. Tiers of compensation mechanism for oil pollution damage. You are not to get confused, it is the same thing because it is made up by 3 tiers. We are coming to that. But there are few things before we come to the nitty-gritty of each of the conventions. There are some very important points applicable to the whole mechanism. And that is, it is a compensation mechanism and not a punishment or a fine. So what are we talking about? Compensation for what? We come here. Oil pollution compensation mechanism. That oil pollution has happened, people have suffered a damage. Damage in the sense financial losses, business losses, economic losses. They have to be compensated for in money. And that is what these two conventions they deal with. Now, what is the meaning that it is not a punishment or a fine, but a compensation mechanism? It means. But before we come to this, in case of an oil pollution, grounding has taken place, oil has come out, etc. Who are the people who will suffer the damages? Common question. Financial losses. Who are the people who will suffer the financial loss? Fishermen. The local coastal tourism industry in the area, coastal resort owner, those banana boat employees, there's so many things. Beach, resort, whatever. Then we know that in any part of the world, whether developed world or developing world, the property that fetches the maximum cost is any property that is developed on the coast. It has the maximum price. So the coastal property developers, they will suffer a lot. Nobody would want to buy their apartment. So they are fishermen, coastal tourism industry, employees in that area, the coastal property developer. These are the main people who suffer financial loss. Coming back to this, that it is not a punishment or a fine, but only a compensation mechanism. It means that in case of an oil pollution incident, people who have suffered a damage have to make a claim for compensation. We can see that oil is floating around in water covered by BBC, CNN, etc. Nobody comes forward to make a claim, nobody pays anything. That is the meaning of compensation mechanism. So you may say, sir, ये तो गलत, but this ship से वो तेज निकला है, the ship owner is supposed to should pay whom? The government of that coastal country. But there is a problem that why it till today it has not yet been made into a fine, because although for the past 50 years, a lot of research studies have gone, some formula have been created, how do you put a dollar value to damage to environment? In this case, damage to the marine environment. But there is too much of variation that it cannot be applied uniformly, because it's a field of marine environmental economics. The studies which have been done at best, and I agree personally that those studies can at best be used as a policy making mechanism कि भाई हम ये एक पोर्ट expand करेंगे, additional revenue by expanding the port would be $5 million, but using that particular formula, the environmental damage will be $2 billion per annum. So the net benefit can be said to be $3 million. Should we take that decision or not? Very good till there. But that cannot be used to provide compensation. So they have taken the next best approach. The government of any country are not the owners of the environment. When we talk about environment, right from the mountains to jungles to the coastal environment, the government of that country is considered to be the trustee of that environment. Trustee means they'll make environmental laws, enforce that law, ensure that the environment is clean. So the next best thing that they have done is, when an oil pollution happens within the area of a coastal country, these people will make a claim. But before that, because the government is the trustee of the environment, it becomes the headache of the government of that coastal country to spend time, money, energy, workforce to clean up that oil pollution. एक तो यार फाइन के तरह से कुछ मिल नहीं सकता, ऊपर से सरकार अपनी जेब से पैसा खर्च करे, दैट इज वेरी बैड. So as part of this oil pollution compensation mechanism, they said, we cannot convert it into a fine to pay X million dollars to the government of that country, but the next best thing we'll do, that you, the government of that coastal country, after all, will be hiring cleanup contractors. Then you hire the cleanup contractor, but you, the government, don't pay. From this mechanism, the cleanup contractor will make a claim and we'll pay the money. That is it. So who are the people who make a claim? The cleanup contractors on behalf of the government of the country, the fishermen who suffer damage, the local coastal tourism industry, the local coastal property development industry. These are the people who have to make a claim for money to be paid. Have you understood this very important part? Guide?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Understood, sir.
Very good. Now, CLC was first developed in 1969. It is known as CLC. It was known as CLC 1969. And 2 years after that, the Fund Convention was developed in 1971. But both the conventions, they form the entire mechanism. So CLC was completely revised in 1992. Therefore, the Fund Convention was also revised in 1992. So what we'll be discussing and what is applicable today is CLC 1992 and Fund Convention 1992. We'll come to this amendment to the Fund Convention. We'll come to that. India is following CLC 1992 and the Fund Convention 1992. In the Merchant Shipping Act, they have deleted these two conventions. We are following the new regime that is being followed around the world, and that is what we will be discussing. Now, other important, first we will take the general important points which is applicable to the whole oil pollution compensation mechanism. Whenever we talk about the entire oil pollution compensation mechanism, we are talking about two IMO conventions, Civil Liability Convention, CLC, and the Fund Convention. So, the compensation mechanism is applicable to persistent oils only. What is persistent? The word persistent comes from the word persist, to exist for a long period of time. So in this case, oil that has characteristic to float on the surface of water for a very long time. And there is only one type of oil which has that characteristic, different grades of crude oil. So this compensation mechanism is applicable in case of crude persistent oil, I mean crude oil pollution only. So therefore, we are only going to be dealing with one type of ship to which this oil pollution compensation mechanism is applicable, and that is crude oil tankers only. Now, when the convention was first, CLC was first developed in 1969, they said that when we are creating a mechanism, why not include the to provide compensation in case of crude oil tanker is in ballast? That means, but when it is loaded, single hull tanker, it runs aground, oil will come out from cargo tanks. But when the tanker is in ballast, in case of a grounding, oil can come from sludge tanks or heavy fuel oil tanks. But unko kyun choda jayega? So, this compensation mechanism deals with providing compensation for oil pollution from crude oil tankers only when the pollution happens from the cargo tank as well as the sludge and the bunker tanks of crude oil tankers only. For bunker pollution compensation from all other types of ships, it is taken care of under the bunker convention, which we will do immediately once we have done the CLC and fund, because the procedure and mechanism is 100% the same. We understand that. Understanding bunker convention will take only 10 minutes, but we do this first.
Sir, excuse me, then why does oil tankers have a separate CLC bunker certificate?
Very good question. I will come to that when I am doing the bunker convention. Very good question, 10 on 10. Let us first understand the concept and the principle of it. Everything is there in my reading material. Smart batch will get it today. Later padhoge, it will be because that is like an essay I have written. And that question is also answered. And I'll be answering this when I'm doing the bunker convention either tomorrow or day after. Correct?
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
These are the general points covering the whole mechanism that is the CLC and fund. Now, the territory of a country exists up to 12 nautical miles, the territorial sea. That means the law of the country is applicable to 12 nautical. So country decide to follow SOLAS, well, it will make SOLAS part of its national laws. In case of India, the Merchant Shipping Act, its validity is till 12 nautical miles. Beyond 12 nautical miles is international water. But sometime in 80s, when it was found that trawlers are becoming more and more mechanized, the fishermen can go and fish 100, 150 miles from their country. What if an oil pollution happens? Those guys will be sucking their thumb. So, by an amendment, the domain of application of the CLC and fund, this was a very special case, was increased to include the exclusive economic zone that is up to 200 nautical miles. It's a very unique thing. With point number 6, I want you to write a question which I will dictate the answer. That's an oral question, 4-line answer. Tell me when you are ready to write down in your registers. Ready?
Yes, sir. Ready.
Okay, write down the question. This is an oral question. Okay, question. In case of India, how is the application of CLC and fund convention increased to include India's EEZ up to 200 nautical miles? Question mark. That is the question. Common question order. Write down the answer. In case of India, the particular section of MSA, first we write, then I'll explain. The particular section of MSA is combined with Maritime Zones Act of India of 1976 to extend the application to include.
So can you repeat after 1976?
The sections of 1976 to extend the application to include India's EEZ up to 200 nautical miles. That is the answer, and the surveyor wants to hear Maritime Zones Act of India of 1976. Now, what does it mean? Now, this is your MSA. It is applicable only up to 12 nautical miles. That particular section dealing with oil pollution compensation is joined with Maritime Zones Act of India. Only for that section, application extends to 200 nautical miles. Rest of MSA is applicable to 12 nautical. Have you followed this? Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now, there are 3 tiers of compensation mechanism. Imagine AC 3-tier in the train. The lower berth is CLC, the middle and the top berth is the front conveyor. So CLC is the first tier of oil pollution compensation mechanism. CLC only deals with how much will the crude oil tanker owner pay if his tanker is involved in an oil pollution incident which results in a claim for damage. Finally, oil pollution incident means when the oil has actually come out. आप कहेंगे सर क्या है? इतना तो पता ही है. No. This means if 2 fully loaded crude oil tankers collide, one tanker, there is only a dent, no crack in the hull, no oil comes out, whereas the other tanker, there is a dent and a crack where the oil comes out. As far as CLC is concerned, it is the oil tanker from which the oil has come out. That tanker owner neck is in line, he has to pay. वो आपस में कोर्ट में झगड़ते रहे कि तुम्हारी गलती थी, मैंने यहाँ पे इतना कॉम्पनसेशन दिया, तुम इतना मुझे दो. That has got nothing to do with CLC. That is the meaning of oil pollution incident. Now, now we are talking about CLC. Now we are coming to the nitty-gritty of it. Keep this in mind. CLC only deals with how much will a crude oil tanker pay. So, under CLC, now we are coming to the 2 conventions one by one. Under CLC, as far as the crude oil tanker owner is concerned, focus of CLC is on crude oil tanker only, no one else. There are 2 very, very, very important parts, and that is strict liability and compulsory insurance cover. What is the meaning of strict liability? आप कह रहे हैं कि सर एक तरफ तो ये compensation है, ऊपर से वो strict liability क्या कहानी नहीं. पहली बात, strict liability comes into play provided there is a claim for damage. One person or 1,000 people making 1,000 fishermen making a claim is immaterial. One person makes a claim for damage, then the liability on part of the crude oil tanker owner is very, very, very strict, which means crude oil tanker owner will have to pay without waiting to prove the fault that created the oil pollution incident. We don't give a damn. Claim has come, Mr. Oil Tanker owner, you make a payment. Matter end. वो आपस में आप fight करते रहे. Only in the following 3 cases, sorry, the crude oil tanker owner will not have to pay anything. Number 1, act of God. Your fully loaded crude oil tanker is at anchor. Once tsunami comes, the tanker lands up on the beach, hull rupture, entire oil comes on the beach. What can the crude oil tanker owner? Oil pollution incident, yes, but the crude oil tanker owner will not have to pay a single paisa. Then who will pay for it? If you are asked in oral, sir, it will be decided by the court in the country where the pollution is happening. Let the court decide. It will come from Prime Minister's Relief Fund or Chief Minister's Relief Fund. Apna crude oil tanker owner will not have to pay anything in case of act of God. Number 2, act of war or sabotage. War, we know what is sabotage. One crude oil tanker may be at anchorage or while loading or discharging, but foolish, idiot, suicide bomber comes in a speedboat with full of explosives and putting that explosive belt and rams in the tanker. That is sabotage. Boom, there is a huge explosion, big hole in the hull, oil comes out. What you and I can do or what the crude oil tanker owner do? A, we don't have weapons on board. B, hypothetically, even if we have weapons on board, you and I are not trained to handle that, no? Correct? Again, matter will be decided by the court, but the crude oil tanker will not pay. And the third is important. When the relevant authorities have not acted responsibly in maintaining the navigational aids and depths of water within their jurisdiction. Now, when you go in English Channel or North Sea or NAVTEX receiver, we keep on like a toilet paper, it keeps churning out information. This buoy is adrift, this recon is not working, etc. Have you come across that or not?
Yes, sir. Very common there.
Very common. It is because of this reason. Applicable authorities, they are informing the international shipping. Okay, we are very proud and very smart seafarers. We never use a buoy for position fixing, but nobody stops us. The applicable authorities have put it, advertised at international level that buoy is adrift, that buoy light is not working, that recon is not working. We have acted responsibly in informing you. You still want to use it and run aground and there's an oil pollution incident, your headache. Don't put it on us. We have acted responsibly. It is because of this. 3 cases, act of God. 2, act of war or sabotage. 3, when the relevant authorities have not acted responsibly in maintaining navigational aids and depths of water in their jurisdiction. Rest all cases of oil pollution resulting in a claim for damage 100%. I repeat, 100% the crude oil tanker has to pay. आप फाइट करते रहिए कि किसकी वजह से वो ऑयल पोल्यूशन हुआ. Oil has come out from your tanker, Mr. Oil Tanker owner, you have to pay. That is the meaning of strict liability. Are you with me or not?
Yes, sir.
The second important point applicable to the crude oil tanker under the Civil Liability Convention CLC is, by law of the CLC, the crude oil tanker is supposed to maintain a compulsory insurance cover, which is provided by the P&I Club. So, what is the procedure? I am a crude oil tanker owner. I go to my P&I Club. I say about this, and as we'll see, it is based on the gross tonnage of the crude oil tanker. That based on my gross tonnage of my crude oil tanker, this is the maximum I will have to pay. Worst case scenario, please tell me how much premium I have to pay. All that is settled. P&I Club gives a letter of undertaking to the crude oil tanker that they are taking the responsibility to come forward and pay on behalf of the crude oil tanker to settle all claims involving motor tanker so and so. Then the crude oil tanker takes that letter to the flag state administration. They will keep that letter, issue a CLC certificate addressed and specifically to the crude oil tanker. Validity 1 year, which is always kept on board in original. What is the meaning of the CLC certificate on the crude oil tanker? That, God forbid, if the crude oil tanker is involved in an oil pollution incident, the P&I Club will come on behalf of the crude oil tanker owner and settle the claim. How the claim is settled, common question and oral, I will be doing. Now, people, all of you, out of all of you who have sailed on who have been sailing on crude oil tankers, when the tanker is approaching a port, they ask the captain, "Captain, can you please scan your CLC certificate and mail it to us? Yes or no?"
Yes, it's very common port paper document.
Absolutely, because they want to be sure. Money is standing by with the P&I Club. God forbid this tanker is involved in an oil pollution incident and some fishermen or cleanup contractor, they make a claim, the P&I Club will come forward and settle the claim. The CLC certificate on board a crude oil tanker is very, very important. The focus of CLC is on the oil tanker. And the Feb and the March back, when I do the unclause with you, I will touch upon, but there is something called as right to innocent passage. You pass through the country's territorial sea without taking permission, provided you are innocent to that port country. You are not a threat. In the absence of CLC certificate, the tanker will be considered a threat. The tanker is no longer innocent. You will be denied the innocent passage. You will be denied entry into the territory of the country. Forget the port. Are you with me till here or not?
Yes, sir.
Now you understand the importance that why on crude oil tanker they ask for the CLC certificate. Now, there is a maximum limit which the crude oil tanker owner has to pay. But you can't have unlimited liability. Unlimited liability is if there is a claim for $1,000, he pays 1,000. If there is a claim for $1 lakh, he pays 1 lakh. That is illogical. There is the maximum limit. Beyond that, you, the crude oil tanker, will not pay. I will just tell you what is the meaning of SDR. It is taken in detail at ASM level. There are two very important points with what you see on the screen. And this is there in your reading material. March, you'll get it today. You have to memorize the table as it is. Once I tell you what is STR and how many US dollars it is equivalent to, you can multiply that and get an idea. The first thing you have to remember is when you memorize this, you have to memorize it as it is in SDR. It is very easy to remember. You will not find it. Number two, you will not round off these figures to 4.5 or 89.8. You are not doing a crime, but it is treated as a principal error at MMD in your written or your oral, so don't make that mistake. So, what is the maximum amount the oil tanker owner has to pay? Oh, let me change it here. I'll not say up to, it should be 2,000 to 5,000. Why? Because this whole oil pollution compensation mechanism is applicable to crude oil tankers 2,000 gross tons and above. So, from 2,000 to 5,000, he pays a maximum of 4.51 million SDR. From 5,001 to 1,40,000, I'll explain 4.51 million SDR plus 631 SDR per gross ton above 5,000. And greater than 1,40,000 gross ton, the crude oil tanker owner pays a maximum of 89.77 million SDR. Now, before the first and the third one is pretty straightforward. I will explain this in the next slide, but before, I just want to tell you what is SDR. CLC first came in 1969. SDR was not existing. So all the payment thing, liability, was in gold francs. Now we know whether it was 1969 or today, gold standards around the world, they vary by the hour. Now, if I am a fisherman, I put forward my claim. The P&I club on behalf of the crude oil tanker owner takes 3-4 weeks to process the claim before the money is given to me. If the gold standard went up, I ended up getting more money. And if the gold standard went down, I ended up losing money. It is something, right? The dollar rate today is, I think, 74 or 75 rupees. If I have $100, it is 7,500 rupees. 1 week later, it goes up to 80. The same $100 is 8,000 rupees. I have earned more. And 1 week later, instead of 80, it comes down to 70. It is worth only 7,000 rupees. The same thing was with the gold standard, but nothing could be done. There is another body called International Monetary Fund, headquarters Washington. In 1976, they created this concept of special drawing right. Why they called it, I do not know. We don't have to get it. What they did was they created a very sophisticated computerized formula where they take not daily but hourly average of all the hard currencies of the world. Now, what is a hard currency? There are only 5 of them. Hard currency means they can be used anywhere in the world. They can be exchanged in any bank anywhere in the world. There, till February 2020, the 5 hard currencies were US dollar, Great Britain pound, euros, Swiss franc, and Japanese yen. But in February 2000, Swiss franc was deleted as a hard currency. I think Switzerland is going in for euro. Probably that is the reason. Instead of Swiss franc, the Chinese yuan was included as a hard currency. As we talk today on 21st of March 2022, the 5 hard currencies are US dollars, Great Britain pounds, euros, Chinese yuan, and Japanese yen. Only 5. Through that sophisticated computerized formula, IMF, International Monetary Fund, takes the hourly average of these 5 currencies, corrected up to 8 places decimal. Now, because these are the hard currencies on all the continents of the world, the market fluctuations get averaged out. So with the result, value of 1 SDR only varies between 1.4 to 1.6 US dollars for 1 SDR. It is so in a nutshell, SDR is not a currency but a unit to measure the collective strength of all the hard currencies of the world on an hourly basis, corrected up to 8 places decimal. That is what it is. Rest we do it in air. So if you want to know how much it is, multiply 4.51 million by 1.5, approximately you'll get so many $1 million. Now, I want to show what is the meaning of this. It says 4.51 million plus 631. So it is 5,001. Let me increase the $5,001 to 1,40,000 gross ton. It is equivalent to 4.51 billion SDR plus 631 SDR per gross ton. So many SDR. Okay. Guys, can you see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's say our crude oil tanker is 1,30,000 gross ton. How much the crude oil tanker owner will have to pay for first 5,000 gross ton? It is 4.51 million SDR. Then remaining gross ton. How many gross tons are balanced? 130 minus 5,000, that is 1,25,000 multiplied by 631. Whatever the total is what his liability will. Followed? Got it, guys? Another example, suppose our crude oil tanker is 95,000 gross ton. First 5,000 is this much. Remaining will be 90,000, 95 minus 5 into 631, whatever the total. Any questions?
Sir, is this universal on the,
Can you repeat that, please?
is it universal or depends on the country where the pollution?
Beta, you are coming in very, very, very feeble.
Sir, is it universal or it depends on the country where the pollution has taken place?
No, no, no. We are talking about international law like SOLAS, MARPOL, STCW, everything. This is international.
Okay.
Okay. So, as a recap to the CLC part of it, that is the first year, lower berth. Limit of liability 5,000, 4.5 billion, 51 million STR, 5,000 for 1,40,000, this plus 631, 1,40,000 and above 89.77 STR. And finally, the summary 4 points. Liability with the ship owner, that is the oil tanker owner. Liability is very strict, meaning there are very few exceptions, only 3: act of God, war or sabotage, not acting responsibly in maintaining the navigational aids afloat. There is oil pollution, one single person coming for a claim. We don't care whether you, Mr. Oil Tanker owner, is at fault or not. That you settle it outside. But as per CLC, you will have to pay. But we will keep a maximum limit. That is point number 3, maximum limit, which is based on the gross tonnage, and it is compulsory for the crude oil tanker to maintain insurance. So, if we come here, if the tanker is 2,000 to 5,000, well, he will get an insurance, the worst case scenario, 4.51 million SDI. अभी इतना मुझे maximum pay करना है, इससे कम है तो वो तो देना ही है, इससे ज़्यादा है, this is the maximum I'll have to pay. If my crude oil tanker is more than 1,40,000, I will get insurance cover for this much, 89.7. If it is less than this, I will pay. It is more than this, I don't pay more than this.